What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel. If you're just getting here, please feel free to get around here and check out some content. Probably got a little bit of stuff out there for everybody at this point. If not, just drop a comment. Let me know. I'll try to get it put out for you. Before we jump in today's video, which is going to be the cage video. This is the next video after the drag video. So this is going to be talking about working a cage today. But before we do that, we got a lot of shout outs to get, and we got some channel announcements coming up. So first off, I want to thank you, Thomas Schwartz, for coming in here and liking and subscribing and commenting. Daniel Stickler, you also, thank you. Greg Howell, that the Lion Dog, that's good news, buddy. And for you, Daniel, yes, the walkie-talkies turned out to be a phenomenal idea. I just had an issue with the quality of mine, but I knew that when I purchased those because I just was trying to test it, and the test went good, man. So Ricky Holland, man, I went and I checked out your video of your pup. You had the comments turned off. I was going to leave you a comment. That's a good-looking pup, man. And you keep working that pup, and that pup will come right along. Really looks interested. Really looks like it's not going to be too much longer before she actually starts in barking. But doing a great job out there. Paul Mitchell, thanks for coming in and liking and subscribing. We have Obscenity, Joey Helferich, Justin, I can't read my own handwriting, but Justin, if you know who you are, thank you. And then we go to Camo Reaper. Okay, so Camo Reaper, I'm going to get you on the next one, man. I'm going to try to make a tip video on getting dogs recut. I know this can be kind of a problem, but it's just kind of what you think it is, right? So, but I may have a little trick for you depending on how you're hunting and how that's going. So, now it is time to get into the big channel announcement today. So I just received my package today from Dogtra. I am now officially field staff for Dogtra. I have a promo code for you guys. So if you, on a purchase of anything over $200, if you use the promo code Melbrook5, you'll get 5% off on any item over $200. I will go ahead and pop that right there for you guys. They also sent me this nice little hat for Dogtra. So there we go, man, making big strides. So shout out to you, Dogtra. Dogtra is a great product. I run their products right here. I have a lot of good reviews about Dogtra. So give them guys a check out. I'll put the link to Dogtra.com down in the description for you guys. I will also link the drag video down there for you guys if you guys want to check that out, because it's going to kind of entail some of this you can incorporate using that video. So it's kind of pertinent information. So before we go too far into the cage work, I just want to tell you guys have to be the gauge of your dog. You guys have to take responsibility to make sure that we're showing a dog a cage an appropriate way and taking the right precautions, because a coon getting hold of a dog that is too young, it can really do some damage. It can really put your dog off for a long time. So we make sure that we're following our state regulations, make sure that we're on doing everything the legal way. But to each their own. Put your dog on a cage at your own risk there. It is a very well-known way to start dogs, and it's a very successful way to get dogs rolling. So some of the things I wanted to jump into here is some of the things that we can kind of look for in a dog to see when it is actually ready to go on and see a cage. Now, we're going to look at confidence for number one. Is this dog a skittish dog? Is this dog or is this dog a boisterous dog? Does this dog get scared or spooked at loud noises, things like this? So if the dog has really found itself and it embodies its confidence and there's nothing really phasing that dog, then that is a good sign. That's a good sign. But we're also going to look at the size of our dog, okay? So our dog needs to be a good sized dog to fend off a coon, or a good sized dog to feel that it has the capacity to do so. Some dogs, they don't care how big they are compared to the coon. They'll just go for it. But we want to know our dog and judge our dog. We also want to look at the kind of drive our dog has. Is our dog constantly after something, constantly searching? Is it constantly going out here? Is it constantly just looking and pushing and pushing and pushing? Does our dog have that drive in it. And then the grit as well. Grit is kind of, you can see the grit in a dog when little scuffles happen. How gritty and how down are they ready to get over whatever? If it's playing in the yard, if a big dog knocks them down, are they getting up and giving chase to that big dog anyways? How phased are they over pain for number one? How phased are they over scary stuff? And just how confident are they all together is a really good thing. So like the warning that I'll give you guys is a dog, it doesn't matter what the age of the dog is, if a coon gets a hold of a dog bad enough, it will put a dog off. Younger dogs, it will put their training back. So we want to be really cautious before we go ahead and do this, okay? So if you guys want to, just drop a comment down there and let me know how you guys decide when it's time to go ahead and put a dog onto a cage. So let's go ahead and let's go straight to the next portion here, and we're going to talk about introducing a cage to the dog, okay? So there's a couple different ways. There's actually about 5 kind of different ways. 5 tips that I can give you guys when introducing a cage to a dog. Number one, if I like doing this for these older dogs, maybe they've had a lot of woods times. Maybe they're striking, but they're not treeing. Maybe they're running with the other dogs, and they're just out there, right? They've had time in the woods, but maybe they're just not doing so great, and they haven't seen a cage before, right? So if they have not seen a cage before, a good thing to do for these dogs is find a nice open area, go out there and set the cage down, and then come in the area and cut your dog off and let it search around and see if it finds that cage. And right there is going to be all that it needs for you to click in your brain. Say your dog is running a bunch of track and it never comes up the tree. We take it, we show it a cage, and it doesn't even bark or strike on the cage. So that gives us a good idea of what our dog has actually been in the woods doing. So this is one good way to introduce to maybe a more seasoned, a little bit more experienced dog, a cage that it hasn't seen before. All right, so another way to do this is to approach the cage with the dog on a leash, but stay a good distance back. I mean, we want to give the dog just enough to where it's not really clicking what it's seeing in there, but maybe it's smelling and it's getting interested. And we're going to let them kind of dictate how close that we will get to that cage with them on the leash. But we're not going to actually let them touch the cage yet. We're not going to let them touch the cage. And once they start lighting up and once they start going after it, once they realize, like, I can do this, and they have the leash confidence and all this stuff, and you're revving them up, then you can cut them off and start working them on the cage. Okay? Another one to do this, a way to do this is some dogs, like say you got the older dog that's been in the woods, and it goes up to the cage and it's not really caring, it's not going to strike, it's not doing anything. Put that dog on a leash, go right to the cage, and this is where I think a lot of guys miss the bucket. I have seen, I don't know how many guys work cages, and the one thing that they do not do is they do not mess with the cage. All right, and I think that this is a huge, huge thing, right? So when a coon sees you, unless it's a really mad coon, unless it's like really a vicious coon, it is not going to care that dog's there. It's just going to sit there safe in its cage, and it's not going to move a muscle, and it's just going to sit there, maybe look around a little bit. It's not going to do much. But if you go over there and you kick that cage with your foot, and I mean kick it and kick it and kick it, like hit the tip of your toe on the side of the cage like this, that coon will go and then it'll start puffing up, start getting angry, start getting mad, and then the cage, and then the dog can see that there's something in there, and that something is actually actively trying to attack you. This will kick in a lot of instincts for the dog, and it kicks in the instincts that it wants to protect you. It wants to not let you get hurt. It wants to aggress back to the aggression. And another thing, it will click, oh, this smells like what he's been trying to get me to go after. Now it's right here, and the dog might be able to put a lot of things together. I've got a lot of dogs who you would just seemingly think would not bark at a cage to bark at a cage by simply kicking at the cage, slapping on the cage, and getting the coon puffed up, and the coon really focused in and trying to get you, trying to get at the dog, because this is where the grit kicks in. This is where the drive kicks in for the dogs. So this is a good gauge to have. If you have a dog that has a lot of grit and a lot of drive, but it doesn't want to bark, this is one way that you can kind of wake that up in that dog. And a lot of guys don't do this. A lot of guys are scared of the cage. A lot of guys are scared of the coon. I'll walk around with that cage. I'll hit that cage. I'll let the dog get on the cage. So this is another way, is just leash the dog up, go directly stand right next to the cage, kicking the cage while the dog is here. Some dogs, they'll start off and they'll be like out here, and they'll get back to the end of the cage, but then they'll turn and start going after it, and then they'll come in. But then you have to be kind of cautious of how we're physically touching our dog while they're doing the cage work, right? Because right when them first couple things start happening, the dog really starts rolling. This is when your dog, people will start mistaking these dogs for maybe being a little people mean or something like that. These dogs are so amped up, they are running on so much adrenaline that even just touching them like this, they might jump and or snap sideways and bark or do whatever just because they're so amped up and so worried about this cage. And that's why it's good for some of these more timid dogs is to have them and not let them get to the cage until they amp up and build their way up to the cage. Another tip for getting a dog rolling onto a cage is to leash the dog back, right? So we're going to leash the dog back and we're going to come out here at the cage and we're just going to kind of interfere, come back in and out, see if the dog will get going, barking, and we're going to amp the dog up. So while the dog's over here barking, we're going to tell them, praise them, good boy for barking, and we're just going to kind of get the cage up in their vicinity. Some dogs will shut up, some dogs will go way back over here behind the tree, some dogs will lay down and hide, some dogs that are just not really wanting to do any cage work, they'll sit back here and they'll bark at you. But we get that cage worked enough and that dog amped up enough barking for us that we can kind of slip the coon in our place and get the dog to focus down on the cage. I kind of went over this in some of my mistakes video and some of my tips video and stuff like that, but this one's going to encompass all things cage work. Okay, so this is a good way to go ahead and start getting dogs rolling on a cage. Using other dogs, I had a comment to this. I didn't put that in my get a dog to bark video because I use that as a last resort, because I like to think that some dogs will put a little pup off or a young dog off. We all know this, or they learn bad habits and they just don't really perform the way that you want them to perform. And some dogs actually excel at being independent and excel at being solo. And some guys who like to start dogs with other dogs to get a hold of the dog that wants to be independent, and they keep shoving it with these other dogs and they're just not getting what they want out of that dog. So I'm gonna kind of talk about this, using other dogs to get dogs going. It's a very good process. Like, I approve of it 100%. I think that there's a little bit of precautions that need to be taken to do this. So we're always going to use a familiar dog. We're never going to use a dog, and I'm not talking about they live on the same yard, two different sides of the yard, never been hunted together, none of this stuff. We need dogs that have lived together, they have been chained next to each other, they have been grown up together, they have been around each other, they've been hunted together, they know each other very, very well. And why this is because if you have this young dog, this inexperienced dog, and this well-seasoned dog, and this well-seasoned dog is just going bananas after this cage and giving it all it's got, this dog doesn't know this dog. So it's going to go, I don't know whether he's going to be mean to me or not. I don't like how aggressive that dog is being. I don't know that dog. Versus getting a house dog. It doesn't have to be a hunting dog. A house dog that they know, whatever the case may be. House dogs are so much easier to get rolling on a cage because they just do what they're told, right? Coonhounds, they kind of need to be acting on instinct more. So you can put a Chihuahua on a cage because you just told it to. So using house dogs are a very good, familiar house dog is what I'll say is the best bet for this case. It works phenomenally a lot to get barks out of dogs, but this is the cage video. But to get them barking at the cage and get them working on that cage initially, the introduction, an older familiar dog. So that is going to wrap up the introduction part. Let me know if you guys have any questions or if I forgot something. I try my best to sit down and write out a bunch of notes and keep myself on track. I do miss some things, but I try to make up for it and mention it in my next videos or something like that. Okay, so the next stage of cage work is we're going to talk about groundwork. Okay, so working the cage on the ground. And there's like two different groundworks, right? The first one's going to be a stationary groundwork. The second one is going to be you are running, dragging the cage. Okay, these two are very good, very optimal. Gets a lot of success. It gets a lot of good work done for a dog. So once we pass the introduction stage and we have the dog rolling on the cage, we are just going to sit back, and once the dog is settled in and feels confident, we're going to pet our dog up, pat it, pat it on its belly or whatever while it's going and going and going. And this is a good key. And another thing a lot of guys do is once that dog starts going off, they go, I do not want to touch that dog while it's barking. I don't want to touch that dog. They're kind of scary. When a dog gets intense and they start really going after something, it's really easy to think that they're going to bite you. But 9 times out of 10, if you time it and you situate yourself the way that you're supposed to be situated and you mind your manners, that dog's going to mind its manners. And you can sit there and you can pet that dog up and you can amp that dog up, tell him, good boy, get him, or, talk to him. It'd be very good. Whatever you guys want to use to get your dog amped and back on that tree is what you should be using every time your dog is getting praised for barking. So we're going to put that together there too. So I use talk to him. We got some guys just use whatever they want to use. So use whatever you prefer. And we're going to train our dog to understand that barking and these words are one, right? So we're patting them up, getting a lot of good cage work. We're hitting the cage, we're getting that coon amped up. Every time that dog starts dying down and that coon starts settling back in, we're going to go over there and we're going to rattle that cage up. We're going to get that coon back amped in and we're going to get that dog amped back in. And we're gonna work them until we feel satisfied that this dog has had enough work, and that is up to you. That is your own opinion on your own dog, and that's your own gauge. What we have to watch out for here is we have to watch out for overworking a dog to the point to where it just says, "Nah, I'm done." Right? We don't ever want to get to that stage. We want to get to the peak of the amped upness, and then we're just going to separate them out and let them keep that amp, right? And okay, so the second one is running down the ground. It's exactly what it says. We're not gonna ho-hum and just kind of like put the cage around the dog. Slap a leash on that cage and book it. Take off running, dragging that cage right behind you. Let the dog chase you right down with that cage and just run straight across the yard and run straight back. I mean, as fast as you can stand to go. This is great. Sling that cage around in a circle. I mean, we're not only engaging all of the instincts of this dog at this point. We are teaching them how some dogs might not know. Oh, when I'm running, I can actually bark. So when they're running and they start barking, they get that grained in their head that that's something that they can do. They can help you on tracking and opening on track. A lot of dogs, it'll help them open on track and stuff like that. But we're not just going to like slowly pull it across the ground. We are going to run that thing. And just like you would any other toy on the end of the leash, right? Because at this point, the dog's amped. It's going for it. It's basically just a toy at this point. And who cares about that cage? That the coon in the cage, that coon should be completely fine in that cage. It's protected. It's inside the cage. So then let's go to the third and the final stage before we get into mock hunts. I'll touch on this in the end of the video. But then we go to tree work. Okay, so this is such an important thing. This is such an important thing. And why I broke those down in those 3 parts is working the cage in 3 different parts is because if you do just the first thing and not the other 2, then you're leaving some open questions on your dog. Same thing, any way that you want to shake it. We want to do an equal amount of amping and getting things rolling, and a lot of good praises and a lot of good that dog clicking that this is what you want it to do. So the tree work. So a lot of times what I would like to do is after the running around and running them back and forth and running that cage for that dog, we're just going to drag the cage up over to wherever we have our dog leashed up and have our dog just come over there and work the cage while we're leashing the dog and leashing the dog back, right? So if you do it slick, the dog won't know and it's not going to think anything of it, and then all of a sudden the dog, when you pull it out of there, the dog's going, but it's stuck. You got it leashed, and you just take that thing and you go straight to the tree, straight to a big tree. Really, the bigger the tree, the better around on the bottom, because them dogs can really steady up, and it will help the dog tree harder and feel more comfortable on that tree. You'll get a lot more results out of a comfortable tree for your dog to tree versus a briar thicket twig in the middle, right? So let's go ahead and pick a nice big open area to work dogs and that has a nice big tree in it, and we're just going to take the coon straight to that tree, get it right in the tree. We're going to pull it straight up in the air, and we're going to get it hanging in the air higher than our dog can get it. You're going to leash it off real good so it doesn't fall down, and then we're just going to go back, we're going to cut our dog off, and that dog should bolt straight over there and get right on that tree and start slamming that tree. And once that happens, we're going to go right over there and we're going to pet our dog up and we're going to amp our dog up and we're going to give it pets and praises and pets and praises and amp it up and amp it up and amp it up. And then then one of the dogs sitting there working and amping it up, and we can actually kind of like what I like to do, especially for younger dogs, is I will just kind of like let them rest their back, kind of like on my chest or on my belly area. That way they have something they can kind of like really stabilize themselves up against, and then just start hammering down and blowing the top off the tree. So that's a really good trick too for getting a lot of really good, solid tree work out of a dog. And then we're going to go over there, we're going to grab a leash, and we're going to work it up and down, work it up and down, pet our dog, good boys, all this stuff, work it up and down, work it up and down, work it up and down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drop it all the way down, let them work it on the ground a little bit, and we're just going to get them, and we're going to go put the dog up, leave the coon out there, and then we can move on into the next stages. Running a drag, I like to do that right. If you haven't ran drags with a live cage before, this is a really good time to do that before you put the dog up. Is we're just going to take the dog and work it back up to where we have it tied up, tie it back up again, and then we're just going to zip off, run our drag, and then we're going to come back, cut our dog off, whatever stage that you're running drags. I recommend going through the whole process with the cage, every single stage of drags. I'll put that in the link in the description. I think I already said that. But then we're going to cut a dog off, and it should go right up there, and it should stick that tree. And then we're just going to continue to work from there and work our way through our drag stages into a mock hunt. Now, a mock hunt is going to be cutting the coon out, letting the coon run off, and then cutting the dog behind it. This is what I call a mock hunt. There is some precursors that I like to have accomplished before I do this, and that is number one, the dog isn't following up its drag, so it can do all stages of the drag work, including the surprise drag, including the test drag, whatever the case may be, all the drag work, and we have a good confidence that it's not going to follow up a drag. Number two is that it is not missing. It is not missing the drags with the cage coon. It is not missing, and it is performing the way that it's supposed to perform, because dogs can miss drags. Dogs may ho-hum at a tree and not tree up, and this is not what we're looking for. If that dog is ho-humming on the tree before it trees up for a drag on a cage coon, it's going to ho-hum and maybe not tree up for a coon that you've cut out. Okay, so then what we're going to look at now is how we're going to cut the coon out for the dog. I see a lot of guys, everybody's probably seen the video. The guy's got the dog leashed up right to the truck, and the cage is right here. He cuts the cage off, and then the coon turns and comes back. Okay, this is something that is so common, man. I've had this happen to me. Seen this happen to buddies. This is something that happens. We all know this is something that happens if you've worked dogs and you've been on cages and stuff. Another thing that I had happen to me is a dog cutting in tall grass. The coon just went and kind of burrowed up in some tall grass, and then it was just like the dog found it, and that was that. And so we're going to prevent all these nice open area, no tree line if you can possibly help it for quite a distance, except for maybe like a couple, one or two trees that you can leash your dog up to. If not, you can just stake your dog out and get it leashed up to something. But we're going to create distance. We're going to create a lot of distance. We're going to take the dog immediately from working the cage and get it leashed back, way far back, probably, 15 yards, 10, 15 yards back from the cage, and have the cage out here. And we're going to open the cage and let the dog watch the coon go out, especially for the first one. We're going to let the dog watch the coon go out, and the dog should be over here just going after it because it's still in the moment. And we're going to go over there. We're going to either, depending on if you've worked this out of your dog or not, I would recommend removing the cage out of the entire area, putting it on the truck, putting it up on something that the dog isn't going to care about. Like the dog has forgotten about this. Because a lot of times what will happen is when you cut the dog off, it's going to stop at the cage, and the coon's just going to go off. So we're going to get the cage out, and we're going to cut the dog loose, and it's going to go out there and do work. And we give the coon a couple minutes, and hopefully we've had a tree line that's far enough out that the coon has a nice long track laid on the ground, and it's got off there, and it's felt comfortable enough to go ahead and just keep running and not tree up immediately. But yeah, so I think I'm going to wrap that one up. Let me know if you guys made it this far. Let me know if you guys like these long videos, because these tend to be so long. It's so hard to pack so much information into these videos. But I'm going to keep putting them out. Let me know if you guys want shorter videos. And I'm going to post something earlier in the video as like a writing floating, probably like right over here somewhere. to ask the guys that maybe don't make it this far in the video if they would like me to do shorter videos, because I know there's a lot of information in here and I get off on tangents and stuff like that. This is going to be close to probably a half an hour video. If you guys have made it this far, I appreciate you so much, and I really thank you guys for coming in here and liking and subscribing and paying attention and staying here this long. It literally makes the world of difference. So we'll wrap that up. You guys keep them treed. Go over to Dogtra.com. Use Melbrook5 for a 5% discount off of products $200 or more. Keep them treed, guys.